My kind friends will not hear of me returning home until I am better, but do not be alarmed. Excepting a sore throat, a fever, and a headache, there is nothing much wrong with me. This is ridiculous.
Well, if Jane does die, it'll be a comfort to know it was in pursuit of Mr. Bingley.
People do not die of cold.
According to Wikipedia, quackery is often synonymous with health fraud and is the promotion of fraudulent or ignorant medical practices. A quack is a fraudulent or ignorant pretender to medical skill, or a person who pretends professionally or publicly to have skill, knowledge, qualification, or credentials they do not possess, also known as a charlatan or a snake oil salesman. The quacks that engage in quackery and seem to hold a lot of influence in how our lives are being managed insist the population undergo something called a PCR test. The PCR test swabs for an RNA genetic sequence. This genetic code can be found in the tonsils and nose. The PCR test will almost always come up positive because it will detect if you've ever had the slightest common cold weeks or even months prior to taking the test. Even if you are over and done with the common cold, the most microscopic remnants of that common cold remain in your RNA. Once you've recovered from your near-death experience of the sniffles, you are not infectious. These dead remnants can't hurt you, can't hurt others, and can't be transmitted, despite what the quacks want you to believe. But the PCR test cannot tell the difference between dead remnants of the common cold or a live virus. Well, then this is why we are getting so many false positives. Furthermore, the PCR test has never, ever been used to discover a virus in a living soul. The test is actually used for forensic purposes for the crime lab. For example, it would be used to test DNA left behind on doorknobs or surfaces at the scene of a crime, to try to identify a perpetrator or even a victim of a crime. So why are we, a free society, being told we must submit to a test that is used to investigate crime scenes? Are we criminals? Do you consider yourself a criminal because at one point in your life you may have had the sniffles? It seems as though the quacks want us to consider ourselves as criminals for being human. Because of the amount of money that is put in these testing sites, many underqualified staff are administering these unnecessary and illegitimate tests without really knowing what they're doing. Take a look at this report of one patient who had brain fluid leaking from her nasal cavity. This may be a one-off case of malpractice, but think of the people you've talked to who've had the test and what kind of complaints they've had afterward, like sinus infections, headaches, or a temporary loss of taste and smell. As mentioned, the PCR test is being used illegitimately, meaning it's not being used for the thing it was created for. But to have individuals submit to these PCR tests in places like drugstores or makeshift testing centers at your local gymnasium, or to have the test done while you're sitting in your car, is further evidence of quackery. Conspiracy theorists would have you believe that this is the highest level of sophisticated scientific protocol. It's not. It's play acting. It's pretending. Since the PCR test is widely used to investigate DNA in crime scenes, the scene of the crime must be hermetically sealed so the DNA can be collected safely in a sterile, sealed-off environment. Does this seem scientific to you? Would you like fries with your PCR test? If getting a cotton swab jammed up into your nasal cavity in the drive-thru to test for something the test itself wasn't even made for is required by the quacks in charge, then what's next? A fast food joint issuing a vaccine? Book of Hours is an art collaboration, archiving Clown World in the age of COVID. If you would like to support our work, please be a patron. Thank you.